Welcome back. Well, Mr. Sam Omatseye joins us now. He's the chairman editorial board of the Nation newspapers. Thank you for coming on this morning.
My pleasure.
Well, reportage about this Bayelsa elections is something that is being focused on in different areas because CP here today is saying, look, no lives are lost. Then we hear Fred Agbedi, DG, Dixon Campaign Organization says lives were lost. And then we hear the APC also responding in terms of how they said that the INEC colluded to ensure victory didn't go their way. All sorts of reports making the rounds at the moment on this matter. But having listened to the CP and the PDP man who said lives were lost, lives were not lost, what do you think?
I think the first impression I had from listening to this CP of Bayelsa State makes me really shudder, frankly, that somebody who is in charge of security will say no lives were lost during the election, no violence took place during the election, and it all went without incident, except later when the thing was over and they only saw 3 deaths that were not connected to the election. I want to know, as the investigator, what really caused those 3 deaths in the first place.
Yeah, and he alluded to post.
Yeah. It was saying post-celebration election and so on. He needs to really get down to give us the narrative because it was just a blanket statement. But to take that away, I mean, you cannot deny the evidence of your own eyes. Maybe the man has different kinds of eyes than the normal human beings have, and maybe that's why they made him a CP in a state like that. And with all sense of responsibility, I don't think people like that should be put in any position where peace and tranquility are required.
But it says persons have been arrested.
Look, the governor himself said that he was going to tamp down celebration because of deaths that took place, because of blood that was shed during the election. Where was the CP when this was going on? I think the Inspector General of Police should take notice of this. Because if that was what happened, it means I went to sleep when people were dying. That's what it means. Because people were dying. Was it not on TV? I'm sure it was on channels. Well, excuse me. It was on channels when they showed in the elections. In the elections. When they went to the Minister of State for Agriculture's house, they went there and they rammed into his house. The evidence is before everybody during the December election. And this one that happened, the evidence was there. Did you not see the story of a woman who went to Abuja to complain about his son that died? This was evidence before. Where was the CP?
Okay, so I'm just saying that, so there was violence, but chances are high that perhaps it's been exaggerated. Do you think that's a possibility?
Look, Stalin, who was the leader of the Soviet Union, was no lover of peace. But he himself said, he said, 1 million deaths is a statistic. 1 death is a tragedy. So it is not an issue of whether you underplay the level of violence. But what happened in Bayelsa State, both in December and the past weekend, was the Niger Delta equivalent of Operation Wet Year. For those people who don't know what Operation Wet Year was, when I was a little boy at that time, I read it in history, I saw some tapes of it. It was a celebration of violence. It was a celebration of violence in the name of electoral brigandage.
Can we quickly put this in perspective and say,
yes,
because this Commissioner of Police was posted to Bayelsa State a day to that particular election.
Yes. Maybe it was not ready. Maybe the structure was not ready. His case is the case of the CP is still baffling. To me. I still need to do some reflection on this because I've never seen this kind of thing happen. That a CP who was supposed to be in charge of election should make such a very stark statement. about violence that took place that were reported by common consent. All the media reported it. Maybe all the media were not present. Maybe Channels was not even present. Maybe you guys were not there. He was the only one there. He was the only one who had eyes. He had eyes of peace. So that anywhere there was violence, he saw peace.
I think let's not try to be sarcastic about this. I'm trying to look at it in a way.
That's the only way you can live with it, sarcasm, because it's just too stark.
I'm looking at it. That was why I had to bring the perspective of his posting, which was like 24 hours before that particular election, and also put that side by side with what Mark also raised about those other people. A good thing you watched him and you listened. The other death that he talked about, that those people that were pulled out of the water. And is it possible that some of those issues after the election, maybe 72 hours after the election, haven't reached the CP yet, as maybe some of these deaths recorded in hospitals have not reached him at the moment?
If they have not reached the CP, where was the CP when the election was taking place? Where were his men? Were they not supposed to police everywhere? Because evidence that there was violence in the election. So 2 deaths happened in the water. He said they probably were celebrating in the water. I don't know, let me explain that. They're celebrating with fishes and crocodiles.
Perhaps we should leave the issue of the contentious issue of whether or not people died, because the CP has maintained his stance. The reports in the papers are different. What the politicians are also saying is quite different from what he's saying. But there was one thing that was clear, and that was that there was violence in the elections.
Yes.
The elections in Bayelsa were always going to be contentious. The issue is, why should a state with just 8 local governments be so contentious in terms of, the elections that are going to take place there? And why should there be so much violence in one election?
My own question, one way of reframing that question is that this was not an election that took place all over the country. It just took place in a small swath of land and water. We have the DSS. We have the Nigerian Army. We have the Nigerian Navy. We have the police. And this happened. It's a failure of the state. It's a failure there's no other way to put it. That we were unable to conduct elections there in peaceful manner. It's a failure of the state.
No, but
it's a failure of government at every level.